Coming up on the second day of the early signing period, Georgia looks to add another elite talent, and Alabama is still trying to do work as well. We'll talk about it all next right here on AT&T SEC Country Live. Hello everyone, welcome to AT&T SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. Good to have you with us as we kind of keep things going with day two of the early signing period around college football. And I sort of get the impression this is sort of like the senioritis version of this show or something. I'm going to be gone for a while after this. It sort of feels like everybody's kind of ready to kind of get some holiday plans started. But nonetheless, we've got a really fun show and a lot to talk about here over the course of the next few minutes.
Yeah, I got to jump through that hula hoop of Christmas, and then both you and I will be off to college football playoff games.
That's right, you're going to the Sugar Bowl as well.
Yeah, going to New Orleans for a little bit of trip myself. So it should be a good couple of weeks leading up to a couple of big shows.
Yeah, so we'll talk a lot about that, and of course everything going on around the world of the SEC. Let me remind you off the top of the program that AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. Let me start with item number one on the list, and obviously y'all know, red and black on my body. I'm going to come from a certain perspective on this. I don't think there's any denying that the story of signing day was the Georgia Bulldogs on what they did on Wednesday. This was probably true at 3 p.m. when we spoke. Brenton Cox committed during the hour we were on the air. It continued to be true throughout the night as well, though, as Georgia adds Nadab Joseph, a defensive back who flips from Alabama, adding Channing Tindall from out of the backyard of another SEC team from Columbia, South Carolina. Tindall is. Georgia gets him, and I mean, no matter how you slice it, Georgia not only the best probably class in the country right now, certainly in the SEC, one of the best days that any SEC team has had in quite some time.
Yeah, it's been historic. I think it's the right word, and we, it's a word we used a ton yesterday. But historic is the right word to go with this, because you look at not only the players they signed, but the caliber of guys in terms of their positions, where these guys come from, how they fit in with Georgia's program, and what Kirby Smart's trying to do. You're right. It was a crazy caliber of young men that they're bringing into Athens this year for sure.
Bernard Watson says, what about Luke Ford? Obviously, the four-star tight end is going to choose between a handful of SEC teams, including Georgia, maybe even, I guess, at one point in time, Ford was connected to Alabama. He'll make his choice later on in the hour here. We hope to be able to bring that to you if it happens before we're off the air here on AT&T SEC Country Live. But that is the story here, is Georgia tries to add another guy, Luke Ford, the four-star tight end, to a group that's sort of growing by the moment. As far as how Georgia was able to get this done here for the class of 2018, well, Kirby Smart said it wasn't so much about one player being a Pied Piper. It was about the entire program really kind of showing itself off as the kind of place where a lot of folks want to play right now.
I think the university sold itself. I obviously think that our momentum on the field, there were numerous kids that when we recruited them in the summer, they said, Coach, I really want to come to Georgia. I just want to know that we're going to play for championships and that it's going to be special. And the year that we had kind of created some momentum and tidal wave effect to bring in some extra guys.
By the way, just a real quick clear up here, Michael Jordan in the comment section, not that Michael Jordan I'm assuming, but Michael Jordan in the comment section says that he heard that the four-star tight end Luke Ford was going to commit at 3 p.m. That's 3 p.m. where Ford lives in the state of Illinois, which is in the central time zone. So the Ford commitment is going to come 4 p.m. Eastern time. So depending on where you are, it's actually 4 Eastern for Luke Ford making his announcement there. But you hear Kirby Smart talking about why it was that Georgia was able to build this kind of class. And I think you probably, from a first-person perspective, probably saw this as much as anybody did at Alabama, in that after a while, the momentum sort of compounds on itself, right. And then things for Alabama over the last few years, and really continuing on even now in 2018, has been a bit of a runaway train. We don't know how far this Georgia situation and they get down the tracks, but right now those early stages of momentum do seem to be rolling here.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you get all these kids on campus in the spring. You get them to camps, you get them to come visit you get them to come to some of these games, and you say, we're going to be good. We're building something crazy here. We're going to be good. We're going to win championships. We're going to do all this in the future. And all of a sudden the recruits start saying, you know what, do I believe him? Do I not believe him? Let me see how this thing starts to play out. I'm going to watch this team, see how they kind of mature, see what kind of offense they're going to have, what kind of defense they're going to have. And then everything that Kirby Smart starts to say starts to come to fruition. You start winning games. You start winning almost all your games in the regular season. You win an SEC title. You go to the college football playoff. All of a sudden these kids are looking at it going, there's no reason for me not to think that this is building in the direction Kirby Smart's doing. All of a sudden, he becomes an honest guy, and the snowball rolls downhill. You start getting good recruits, and other players want to follow them, and that's exactly what's happening right now.
Charlie Adams in the comments section says, BA, great day for your dogs. These don't necessarily mean much, though. Florida had the best class in the history of recruiting. It didn't amount to anything. So the challenge is instilled in front of Coach Smart and company, and that is true. You've got to put wins on the field to go along with the wins you get in recruiting, but I'm a big believer that you don't get wins on the field without these kinds of recruiting wins, at least in any kind of long-range way. But I will acknowledge something that kind of Charlie points to here, which is, it seems like for a lot of people like looking in on Georgia on this, there is this thought of, hey, Georgia's been a good recruiting program for quite some time. And I think you're aware of this, but I want to make sure the audience understands as well. There's a huge difference in being like 8th, 9th, and 10th, where Georgia is usually in recruiting, and where it's been under Kirby Smart. Number 3 last year, maybe number 1 this year. The difference between, the number 8 recruiting class and the number 1, 2, or 3 recruiting class is as many as 10 or 12 4- and 5-star prospects. That's bringing in almost a dozen extra NFL caliber bodies into your program. There's a huge difference in, even when you're in the top 10, the top of the top 10 and the bottom of the top 10 in terms of NFL caliber bodies, there's still a huge difference in that gap.
Well, and I look at it from actually a different perspective than you're looking at it. I look at it and say, well, you can get these 5 stars. Can you develop them? And right now, Kirby Smart and everybody on that staff right now has shown the ability to do that. They've shown the ability to develop players. I mean, and they came in, and they had an 8-win season last year. All of a sudden, they're in the college football playoff this year. They've done more with a little bit less. Not that they didn't have talent at Georgia when they got there. I think the cover was pretty full. But then all of a sudden, you're getting where you're taking these 3-star linemen or 3-star D linemen. All of a sudden, you're getting 5-star guards and guys in their place. And that, to me, is exponential in the change it could have on your program.
I want you to hear from Kirby Smart here again, and I want you to listen to what Smart says, and then compare that in a moment to what Nick Saban says about his own class. And listen to the similarity and what you hear in terms of a tone. The bigger recruiters, the bigger coaches in the SEC have sort of already moved beyond just the early signing period. First, here's Kirby Smart.
There's still spots left, and I think you're always recruiting. I mean, we're going to be trying to recruit the rest of the spots, and there's going to be some really, really probably intense battles come January because the guys that are left are targeted by all the top programs. So there's going to be some guys out there that we still go after. So it's not like you can say, okay, relax, we're done, because that's not the case. We got work to do in recruiting.
It's worth pointing out when Smart said that sentence, Georgia still had not gotten the announcement about Nadab Joseph and not gotten the announcement about Channing Tindall, the 4-star linebacker. So Smart good to his word, true to his word, and that they went out and added players even after Smart gave his press conference yesterday.
Well, Kirby understands that recruiting is something that's never over with. You're never kind of at the top of the mountain in terms of college football recruiting. You have to hit the road as soon as this period is over with.
Yeah.
You're on the phone with other guys. You're on the phone with next year's class. You're on the phone with guys during this college football playoff period. It's something that never ends for these guys. They're going to have official visitors, throughout this entire offseason, all the way into spring, and then the camps start back up, and you start the whole process over again. So Kirby Smart understands that one class won't make your team, 2 classes won't make your team. You have to continue to do it year after year.
Let me move on to item number 2 here on our AT&T SEC Country Live 1st and 10. Let's look at Alabama's signing class from yesterday. Alabama bringing in a bunch of guys, rising the recruiting rankings. They did that over the course of the last few months. Did some more of that on the start of the early signing period on Wednesday. But when you hear from Nick Saban, you're going to hear him echo some of the same kind of stuff you just heard from Kirby Smart, but maybe from a slightly different perspective and for a slightly different reason. Here is Alabama coach Nick Saban kind of weighing in on what he thinks about the start of his 2018 recruiting class.
From a recruiting standpoint, this is all kind of new for us, but the early signing period, I guess, is some kind of an indication of what kind of recruiting that you're doing. We're very pleased and happy with the 15 players that we were able to sign to Alabama today. I think there's a lot to do to finish this class, and we can only take 23 guys this year, so we basically have 8 spots left.
So that's Saban saying, I guess the early signing period is some kind of indication as of how things are going, and I'm probably guilty at times of maybe ascribing too much sort of secret meaning or kind of calculated words behind Nick Saban. But this almost seems like a bit of a deflection to me, and that hey, don't judge our 2018 class until it's over in February. What's happening in December is only part of that evaluation. But the truth is, mathematically, most teams are going to sign 75 or 80% of their kids right now. So this is more than just a partial assessment of the class. For a lot of programs, it's it's something close to the entire assessment. Maybe Nick Saban saying, hey, I know right now we're not the top program in the SEC, but withhold judgment on us. Is that what you think Saban's meaning there? And how do you kind of view what Alabama was able to get done yesterday and what it's getting done here this week?
I think in a way that maybe he's looking at it like that. I think that Nick Saban is cautiously optimistic about what they can do in this next period. I think that you still have – listen, they're going to go after a ton of DBs. Obviously losing to Dab Joseph last night, but they're still going to go after the likes of Tyson Campbell and Patrick Surtain, Isaac Taylor-Stewart. There's still a bunch of guys out there. Then you have Bobby Brown, Texas A&M commit, the decommits last night. I think that Nick Saban thinks, you know what, we didn't hit on some of the guys we wanted to right now, but we are building in that direction. Cautiously optimistic to me is kind of what I heard Nick Saban with right there.
And you mentioned Adab Joseph. That's a player that Alabama lost out on yesterday. And then there was a report from Chris Kirshner, SECCountry.com. In fact, we'll show it to you right now. What Kirshner wrote last night, just after 10 p.m., that Nadab Joseph, the defensive back that flips to Georgia, wasn't sent a letter of intent, according to a person close to the program. Couldn't sign with the Tide, in other words, Kirshner writes. I haven't been told the reason for why he wasn't given one. There could be multiple reasons. His grades aren't up to par. Bama may feel like they have a better option out there, like Tyson Campbell or Patrick Surtain or Isaac Taylor-Stewart, one of the five-star cornerbacks that are still out there. That's what Chris Kirshner wrote at SECCountry.com. And, I don't know what to make of this Joseph situation. A lot of Georgia fans are going to say, oh, this is just sour grapes about Alabama leaking something about a player that it wasn't able to get. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But it also shows that Alabama is the kind of program that one of the very few in college football that's still able to be sort of picky and choosy about who it kind of wants to bring in. So while Georgia is reigning on top of the SEC right now, it's probably not, it'd be unfair to assume that Alabama is simply falling on its face here. This is still a program that does have an opportunity to be pretty selective about who it wants to bring in.
Like I said, I think that Nick Saban's cautiously optimistic. I think when you look at what they have and what they've already signed, it's a pretty good class. You're looking at, number 6 right now, 247 Sports Composite. I think that this class in the next couple of months could go one of two directions, though. I think that you probably look at trying to sign a guy like James Foster, the quarterback there out of Montgomery. You look at Bobby Brown, the former Texas A&M commit. He mentioned some of those cornerbacks are going to go after, maybe even a guy like Kelvin Joseph, who's a 4-star guy. But if you miss on all those guys, because none of those guys are favored to go to Alabama, maybe except Bobby Brown right now. Yeah. If you miss on some of those guys, then all of a sudden you are settling for some of these 3-star guys, and you have to fill out the rest of this class. So I have to believe that Nick Saban, just given his past, feels pretty good about what he can do in the month of February with his next signing day. To me, it's not the snowball feeling that you've had in the past, Alabama. That's what Georgia has right now. It's not, it's not when these guys are going to sign. It's if they sign now for Alabama. And I think that everybody's kind of holding their breath to see what happens.
Trey Duke says that Georgia's the new kings of the SEC. Trey's obviously a Georgia fan, and I understand where that comes from. I will say, though, that, it's important for Georgia to sort of hold off on proclaiming itself as kings of the SEC until it actually beats Alabama head-to-head. I mean, and you've got to start collecting not just the recruiting wins head-to-head, but you've got to also sort of take on Alabama, take on Nick Saban, beat him on the field head-to-head here as well. I mean, right now, Georgia has gotten some players Alabama's wanted. You haven't really seen an SEC team do that in a while. I thought that Paul Feinbaum said it pretty well the other day that, right now Kirby Smart in Georgia looks like the most legitimate threat to Alabama in the SEC that we've certainly seen since Alabama kind of got it rolling again, I guess probably at the start of the 2011 season. This is the most legitimate threat to Alabama we've seen. Not the one mustered by Malzahn in 2013 or the one that sort of, Les Miles in the 2011 season when won the SEC. This is a more legitimate threat on paper than what that was. But there is still work to be done in sort of those head-to-head collisions to truly, I think, bear that out.
Listen, if Georgia wins SEC next year and has another number 1 recruiting class and they never do face Alabama in the next couple of years, then I'm fine with Georgia. I think I come from it from a different perspective where I'm actually kind of excited about it. As an Alabama guy, you never want Alabama to not be on top of the mountain. But I think a lot of Alabama fans are like, we didn't want to face Missouri anymore in the SEC title game. We didn't want to face Florida. And if and when they get back there under Nick Saban, then I think it excites a lot of Alabama fans that a guy they love in Kirby Smart could bring another team from the East to kind of compare that. When I was a senior, when I was a junior in 08 and 09, playing Urban Meyer and the Florida Gators made for very special 1 versus 2 matchups. And I think that this comparison, when Kirby Smart in Georgia and Nick Saban in Alabama have the opportunity to kind of make that a huge matchup again.
Yeah, I don't think the SEC was very entertaining in 2016 because Alabama was the only elite team in this league. I don't care who you root for. I mean, I think we'd all objectively agree that the SEC is a better league when there is, and you want it to be your team, I totally get that, but when there are multiple teams competing for the top spot, the league overall is more entertaining and probably better. But for the team that is in that competition for that elite status, having someone else to push it, to challenge it, to threaten it, I do think that makes both sides better.
I'm telling you, I've talked to at least 5 or 6 Alabama fans that wonder if Kirby Smart making this push in the East doesn't prolong Nick Saban's career at Alabama a little bit more. Maybe re-energize, feel that competitive nature that everybody knows that Nick Saban has and Kirby Smart has as well. I think the entire league is getting tougher. I look at what Florida's doing under Dan Mullen right now. Not a blockbuster recruiting class, but got some pieces and a ton of needs. I think that Pruitt is probably a year away from turning around their recruiting classes. We feel good about Muschamp. I think there's a lot of teams that are building back the strength of the SEC right now, and I think that a lot of fans, obviously you want it to be your team like you said, but a lot of fans should feel excited about where this league's headed.
Yeah, let me move on. Speaking of the Florida Gators, item number 3 here on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. Speaking of Florida, getting a pretty good class in place, at least the starts of one yesterday, and obviously the centerpiece of that is the 4-star quarterback from Heard County, Georgia, Emory Jones. On the Florida Twitter account yesterday, Florida coach Dan Mullen took a couple minutes to sort of share some of the thoughts about what he likes about Jones, what he thinks he brings to the Gators. Here's Dan Mullen.
Talent-wise, what does this kid offer?
Well, the most important thing, he's a winner. He has some of that it quality that you look for, that you want in your quarterback. And I even told him the most important thing I saw, how ferociously he plays defense. Because it just shows that you can see he can spin it, he can run it, he can throw, he can run. But it's those other qualities, to me, that are the most important when you're going to be the quarterback, you're going to be the leader of the program. All of those other things are huge, and you see that he has those things. That's what's special.
Now, when you come play quarterback at the University of Florida, it's a little different. Expectations are high. You obviously know that background, but what kind of culture can he bring to this place?
Well, I think the great thing is he knows that, and that was one of the things that really excited him to want to embrace that.
So you see there Dan Mullen talking about the Florida Gators, talking about Emory Jones. Charlie Adams in the comment section says he's glad that Mullen was able to grab Emory Jones. What a year it was for high school quarterbacks in Georgia, and that's true. When you think about Emory Jones going to Florida, obviously Justin Fields ends up at Georgia. Trevor Lawrence, another Georgia kid, ends up at Clemson. He's the nation's #1 player right now, according to 24/7 Sports Composite Team ranking. And there, Dan Mullen says that he's a winner. That's what he likes about Emory Jones. You play with a lot of quarterbacks, both at the college level, the NFL level. You play with Matt Ryan, the NFL. That's a pretty good quarterback to play with. But what is it that you are looking for from a quarterback? What was it about a quarterback before you saw the guy play that you said, you know what, this is probably a guy I can play with? We all think about quarterbacks being sort of like the gunslinger, almost like the modern-day Cowboys.
Right.
What do they do to make you feel good about them?
I think for an offensive lineman getting in the huddle, I think it's a guy that's even keel. A guy that's going to stay calm under pressure. You want somebody in the huddle. Listen, you don't want somebody running in the huddle. You're in a 2-minute drill. They're sweating. You can't even hear what they're saying. They're freaking out about the situation. They're freaking out about the stage that they're on, or playing under the lights, or worried about the away crowd. Somebody that's calm, somebody that walks in the huddle and says, listen, here's what's going to happen, here's how we're going to get it done. And that's not necessarily in the fall. That's not necessarily in September when you're on the field. That happens a lot spring game. That happens a lot when you're going up against your own teammates in spring football and building towards things like that in training camp. You can tell which quarterbacks are the winners. And obviously Dan Mullen feels confident about Emory Jones, and I think he's got a heck of a prospect. I mentioned earlier on Twitter, I see him kind of filling out into a Lamar Jackson type of body. He's that 6'2 and a half, lower 200s, 210. He's going to have some speed. I think he runs a 4.6 40. I think he fits perfectly in what Dan Mullen's trying to do. Marcus
Collins in the comment section says Dan Mullen's done in 3 years. He gives you 3 laugh emojis. Here's the thing. I don't know what Dan Mullen's future is. I think he's a pretty good coach. I think he's gotten a pretty good quarterback here in Emory Jones. But you just a moment ago said, hey, Georgia's obviously killing it. Alabama's still killing it. Auburn's going to bring in a pretty good class. In a couple years, Jeremy Pruitt's going to be doing fine at Tennessee. Dan Mullen, the makings of something pretty good here at Florida. You can mention Ed Orgeron as well. I just gave you 6 coaches right there before you even get to some of the other SEC teams. The fact of the matter is, there are not enough players for all 6 of those programs. They're just not. That's always the issue in the SEC. That recruiting is such a cutthroat business because there are fewer elite players than there are spots on rosters. And so therefore, of those 6, I don't know who's going to be disappointed, but somebody's not going to get the class they want going forward. Either Georgia can't stay on top, Alabama starts to falter in what may be the final stages of Nick Saban's career. It never materializes for Jeremy Pruitt. It never materializes for Dan Mullen, Malzahn, Orgeron, whatever. Somebody from that group of 6 is going to be disappointed. There's just not enough players to go around.
Well, I'll one-up you, and I'll say not only is there not enough players to go around, there's not enough wins to go around. Yeah. None of these, you're not going to have 6 happy fan bases at the end of the year that say, oh, we went 11-1. That's just not going to happen. Some of these teams are going to lose, and You know, I think that George is building something very special, but when you look at what Dan Mullen does offensively, maybe he catches them off guard. Maybe Will Muschamp catches Georgia off guard. Maybe Tennessee under Jeremy Pruitt jumps up. I think it's the same way with Alabama in the West when you talk about Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M could start to challenge them. Ed Orgeron obviously has a ton of talent down there. An offense like Chad Morris at Arkansas can give you a ton of problems as well. So there's not enough wins to go around. Not everybody's going to be happy at the end of 2018. I think you have to keep it in perspective what all these coaches are trying to do.
And that's the reason why I say that. You know, Dan Mullen gets Emory Jones, who is a great pickup. But there is still incredible pressure on Mullen to put something around Emory Jones pretty quickly so you can develop Emory Jones as a player. Otherwise, your honeymoon's going to expire, and you're still trying to figure out and fill out your roster. Getting Emory Jones is a good step in that direction. But, man, there is still a ton of pressure on Dan Mullen to put something in place around Emory Jones so we can win with him early, because if you can buy yourself a little time in those first couple years, then you can get your sea legs underneath you. But if it goes poorly, like it did for Jim McElwain in recruiting in 2015, finished outside the top 20. When you sort of go for an offer like that with a lot of big time prospects, you are almost never able to recover from that from a program standpoint.
Yeah, you're not. And listen, I'm going to go on the record saying I think Dan Mullen's going to be a good coach at Florida. I really do. We talked about it last offseason. I felt better about Kirby Smart at Georgia than I did at Jim McElwain at Florida, and that was after he had gone to 2 straight SEC championship games. I get the same feeling about Dan Mullen. And listen, you can say what you want about his class. I think they're coming in at 14th in the country right now. But he's the highest ranked coach that switched jobs this year. You know, in terms of the guys that just got on campus, Dan Mullen's up there. He's done a pretty incredible job of doing some things. And I mentioned it yesterday, comparing to what's going on at Florida State right now with Willie Taggart, who a lot of people thought was a home run hire as well. Dan Mullen's up there. So I don't have any doubt in my mind that next year in a full recruiting cycle, Dan Mullen's going to bring in some players and a lot of people that want to wear that Gator uniform.
Tyler Stanfield says Emory Jones is Treon Harris 2.0. What that means is Harris was mostly a running quarterback when he played at Florida. Y'all can see the colors that I'm wearing today, so this is, I think, a pretty objective piece of analysis. I used to do a lot of high school football games. I used to broadcast them. I saw Treon Harris play in high school. He was a tremendous athlete, but he was not a developed quarterback even as a high school player. I can tell you that right now, based on the film that we've been watching on Emory Jones, he's already more developed going into his beginning of his college career than Treon Harris was. And I'm a guy that's going to root against Emory Jones at the college level. I don't mind telling you that. I don't lie to y'all about stuff like that. I'm going to root against Emory Jones, but Jones is already more developed than Treon Harris was.
Yeah, I definitely think he is. And it's all about the system, too. I mean, let's not forget that you can develop a quarterback, and Dan Mullen has shown the ability to develop quarterbacks and do more with less. So Treon Harris, for everything you thought had the upside athletically and about trying to develop when he got on the campus, that guy never really stood a chance of being good in a lot of terms of what he was asked to do in that Florida program. Now, they had an incredible run of quarterbacks at Florida after Tim Tebow left, and none of them were any good. So I don't think we can put Treon Harris just yet. I think let Dan Mullen do what he wants to do with Emory Jones.
This has got nothing to do with nothing, but Treon Harris went to Booker T. Washington down in Miami. He was the quarterback. Mark Walton, who ended up at Miami, he was injured this year, but Mark Walton was the tailback. They ran the option between those two. They could not be stopped. It's just the simplest pitch option between a running quarterback. He'd either keep it or give it to Walton. Those two were just blazing past people.
I bet they had some pretty good offensive lines too, didn't they? Let's not forget about this.
Guy always goes back to the offensive line with this guy. Let me remind you that AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. All right, so item number 4 here. I sort of think this is a juicy story. You tell me if you kind of think it is. So we had the deal the other day about the UCF running back who was talking about how Auburn has not seen the kind of speed in the SEC that UCF's going to bring to the table. That's a head scratcher for us. We're all like, what is this guy talking about? Well, now you've got some quotes from UCF coach, at least for one more game, Scott Frost, about how his team is preparing in comparison to Auburn. And I don't know. This whole thing comes across as really weird. Let me see if I can. I'm going to go to SECCountry.com, who's got the story on this. And so here is what Scott Frost said about the way that his team is preparing compared to the way that Auburn is preparing. And the question is sort of based on how are you managing the double duty of going to Nebraska but also staying here at UCF. And Frost says, Auburn didn't even practice for this game until Saturday. We practiced last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with almost an entire staff. We're doing everything and more than we've done at Oregon at the time I was there, and we're at 6 of these. We were at 6 of these bowl games. We have more coaches at practice. We're practicing on the exact same schedule that we did, trying to get ready for these games. In other words, he's sort of talking about how sort of organized and up to speed they are. This is Scott Frost again. I'm reading from SEC Country. We're game planning at the same time. And like I said, we're ahead of our opponent. This is where it gets very, very specific and interesting. He says we're ahead of our opponent because they started practicing on Saturday. He's basically counting Gus Malzahn's practice days, how Malzahn's using his practice time. Well, Malzahn yesterday during his early signing period press conference was asked, what do you make of what Scott Frost said about you and minding your business? And here is what Gus Malzahn said about that.
Yeah, no, this is really pretty close to what we've done in the past. And of course, we started, on a Friday. That's what we started, and feel very good about the preparation. We've had very physical practices. We've had very good practices, so I feel very good about that. And then once we get to bowl site, we'll get in our normal routine.
So there's a part of me that wants to say, what are you laughing about?
No, I'm laughing at Scott Frost. I'm going to go into it in just a second.
Okay, so there's a part of me that wants to say that Frost, I sort of know what he's trying to say. Hey, don't ask me questions about, doing double duty. We're practicing more than Auburn is. But his answer makes him sound a bit like a punk to me.
It definitely sounds like a punk. And let me tell you why. Here's why this answer from Scott Frost makes him a punk. Scott Frost won't be at UCF next year. Right now, all these other programs are worrying about developing the guys that are younger on the team.
That's such a good point.
They're worried about, hey, let's get these guys practice reps. Let's make sure we're going through, let's get ready for next year. Let's worry about spring. Let's worry about developing some of these redshirt kids. Let's get them some practice reps. Scott Frost is getting ready to get done with this game and go, okay, well, see you guys later. I don't really care what you do next year.
That's exactly right.
I think that makes it such a laughing stock for him to come out and say something like this about Gus Malzahn and Auburn, who has a pretty good year. Yes, Scott Frost. Yeah, you've been to Oregon. That's pretty cool and everything, and you've been at UCF. I'm telling you right now, you need to watch what you say if you're Scott Frost, because you are treading in some really, really, really shallow water.
That is so true. The other thing that kind of bothers me is he sort of lets it drop, hey, we were in a lot of these games when I was at Oregon. The laundry list of people who thought they were geniuses while as they were assistant coaches is about that long. Only to find out when they got to become a head coach that life wasn't quite as easy as they thought it was going to be. And yeah, you had a good year at UCF and you compiled a lot of stats and you beat up on some teams. But you're going to play a team like Auburn that you have not seen the likes of at any point in time in your life there in Orlando. And you're going to go try to run a program in Nebraska where it's more than just, hey, let's take everybody else's cast-offs and let's sort of run up the score against a bunch of have-not type programs. I think that Scott Frost is going to be humbled so fast in his coaching ranks. I think Florida dodged a major bullet by not hiring this guy. They've got a true pro in Dan Mullen, whether I like him or not. They got a true pro in Dan Mullen. Scott Frost comes across like a clown getting ready for this football game, acting like his program's got it together more than Auburn, and he acts like he's got more experience in these kinds of things than Malzahn does. Auburn played for a national championship a couple years ago while Scott Frost was riding the bench for some NFL team.
You know what's funny about it too is we hear the comments about they haven't seen UCF speed. They don't have speed like this in the SEC, and you wonder, where does this guy get off saying something like this? Who is even talking about? Oh, I get it now. Scott Frost, I haven't heard him talk very much other than like the Nebraska presser, but now I understand where this is coming from. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying by any means that Auburn's a slam dunk to win. I think UCF's a very good team, and they're going to give Auburn a lot of fits. But play it, week in and week out. Try to build this program from the ground up. Worry about, the redshirt kids, like I said, building towards next year. It's not something Scott Frost is worried about and hasn't had to worry about. And now he's going to get in Nebraska, and I'm telling you right now, he's made an enemy of me with some of the stuff he said.
And that's what I'm seeing in the comment section, too. Y'all know Jeremy Pettis. He's the biggest Alabama fan in the world. He says, I can't wait to see this bowl game. Van Bird, y'all know him. He's a huge Georgia guy. He says, Auburn's going to roll all over UCF. Michael Collum in the comment section says, Auburn's going to put a beat down on UCF. You got Mark Cochran. I'm not sure who Mark roots for, but he says, I don't care for Auburn, but Auburn's going to shut them down. You got Georgia guys and Alabama guys. These are Auburn haters. They're all saying, you know what? Now I got to sort of halfway look for Auburn to put a beat down on UCF because these guys are talking out the side of their neck.
It is funny because it's like, it's the holiday season and it's bowl season for us. So it's like we've all been cheering against each other all year. All of a sudden now it's like bowl season. We can all come together in this room, in this message board, and be like, you know what? Recruiting, yeah, that's one thing. But right now we're all cheering for each other's teams to beat some of these non-conference.
Is that what this is? Is this a little Christmas good cheer
from
some of these Alabama guys and Georgia guys when it comes to Auburn?
Yeah.
Michael Collins says Auburn does have a really good defense. And that's the thing. It's like you know, Frost is going to find this out. That life, I mean, you don't think Mark Helfrich, the old Oregon offensive coordinator, strutted around, thought he was a genius, until he became an Oregon head coach, and it took him about 2 years to get his brains kicked in? I mean, Scott, you don't think Scott Frost would the same thing?
Listen, Oregon in 2010 found out exactly what Auburn defense was like and what SEC speed was like. They had this high-flying offense with all these players from Oregon. They go in there, they're averaging like 45 points a game, and they score 10 against Auburn in the national title.
Trey Duke says, y'all are acting like a bunch of snowflakes. In other words, you're worried too much about what Scott Frost is saying there. And maybe that's the case. Maybe I'm making too much out of it. But it's almost like I can't put my finger on it. There's something about Scott Frost here and this UCF running back that just really rubbed me the wrong way. And it's not just the SEC pride thing. It's to me that there's a level of sort of like misguided hubris that it takes to say something.
Exactly. Well, here's my problem with it. Even if I am at an SEC school, and I played at Alabama, I would never go out and say this about any other team. Playing for a national title team in Alabama, I would never be like, they've never seen speed like we have. Like, that's just, it makes you sound so full of yourself. And you're right, hubris is a good word. Yeah. And for Scott Frost to kind of back up these comments and say, you know what, we're well prepared, I don't like the look of that.
Trey Duke says, just because he doesn't talk like a coaching robot, he's a punk, y'all are annoying. So I understand where you're coming from on that you don't want all coaches to sort of sound the exact same way and be robots. And to Malzahn's credit, I didn't have this audio for you, but he also in these same comments said that he thought that this was Scott Frost simply trying to explain his own schedule.
Yeah, I thought Malzahn handled it well.
Yeah, maybe being defensive about his own issues, and that may be the case. There is still something about college football is won by players. Genius coaches don't last very long. Coaches that bring in players and build up programs, those are the guys that do the winning. So Scott Frost, thinking he's smarter than the whole world, that's the thing that probably bothers me a little bit the most about this.
I think the thing that just bothers me is, like I said earlier, it feels like a cheap shot. That Gus Malzahn's worried about the future of his program, worried about bringing these players along, worried about signing day. And Scott Frost is like, yeah, well, we're already practicing for Auburn. Well, it's your last game at UCF, so what are you talking about? Of course you're practicing for Auburn right now.
Larry Goldberg says Scott Frost is kiffining. Maybe there's a little kiffing going on there with him on that. Let me move on here to item number 5 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. And for LSU, I want to bring the Orgeron audio in here because I'm kind of curious where LSU fans are on this at this point. Yeah. Getting ready to play what I think is a pretty entertaining bowl game against Notre Dame, but will not have one of the top players on the roster for the game, as Ed Orgeron made official yesterday. See if you can decipher what Orgeron says here. He'll let you know that Arden Key is not going to be playing against Notre Dame.
A couple of things. Arden Key, Corey Thompson, and Downey are out with injuries that will not be coming to the bowl.
So Arden Key not going to be playing for LSU there in that game. And obviously, this sort of conjures up the thing of, well, is this a guy that we questioned his desire to be a part of the LSU program back in the spring? Is this a guy just checking out early because he wants to go on to the NFL? Is this a situation where not playing is warranted? I mean, some of those questions are going to pop up based on the relationship that Key has seemed to have with LSU over the last year here.
Yeah, this reminds me of, and I think somebody just said it in the comment section, Steve Wheeler said, out with an NFL injury, because we used to have this in the NFL. Guys we'd have guys that sit out of practice, and on their practice report, it would say general soreness. And it was general soreness. It was like, I'm not really sure what's wrong with me right now. I just don't feel like practicing. And that is a lot what it feels like. I can't speak for Arden Key. Can't speak for his love of the LSU program right now. If he wants to sit out the bowl game because of his NFL prospects, I'm not going to judge him for that. I'm really not. But I don't want to mask it either with, well, he's injured and he's trying to nurse himself back to health. I think that's kind of a cop-out as well. And I love, in the comment section, I do want to hear, from the LSU fans how they feel about this, because then all of a sudden you're out, Corey Thompson, Donnie Alexander. You're going to have to play a lot of Clavon Chason, Jacob Phillips, Tyler Taylor. All these guys are going to have to plug in and kind of carry the banner for LSU.
A lot of different kind of wide-ranging comments coming in. Will Ward says, what a coward Arden Key is. Not playing in a major bowl game is disappointing. Esteban Estevez says the opposite. Key's a great player, but will always have great defensive line players. Next man up. Good luck to Arden Key at the next level. Tyler Mann says Arden Key isn't injured. He's getting ready for the draft. It's fine. We have Case on to take his place, which you kind of mentioned a moment ago. Yeah. So I'm sort of all fine with players just skipping the bowl to go get ready for the draft. I don't mind that. I will admit, though, as a guy that loves college football, and y'all got to realize, I don't watch that much NFL. I'll watch the playoff games. I like trying to get in front of a TV around 3 p.m. Eastern time on a Sunday, see the end of those 1 o'clock games. But for the most part, I'm not living and dying with the NFL. I couldn't even tell you who the division leaders are in the NFL, to be honest with you right now. So I love college football, don't care much for the NFL. It does concern me a little bit, and it feels like almost a slippery slope if we say hey, if you're going to the NFL, don't play in your meaningless bowl game. Well, how much longer before that turns into, and don't play your meaningless rivalry game at the end of the season? Because if you're worried about an injury, you're just as likely to get injured at the end of a regular season as you are at the end of a bowl game. I don't think that Key's draft status should be impacted whatsoever if he's choosing not to sit out. That seems like a business decision, not a character flaw. But it does concern me that all of a sudden there's going to be a little bit of a mission creep here, and all of a sudden you got guys sitting out of regular season games, which I think would just be a real blight on the sport at that point.
I agree with you, and I think that prospects, I agree with you, it could easily head in that direction. I think these prospects actually have to be careful, because I'm telling you right now, I've known a lot of NFL scouts, I've known some of these GMs that have been spread around. I think we had actually four GMs right now that were in the front office of the Falcons when I was there, and they've all done a good job of building their teams, and I think you have to be careful. I'm telling you, these guys love competitiveness, and I think you understand it when you get to the end of the year and you're like, bowl game, I don't want a chance getting dinged up. Jake Butt really had a tough injury a couple years ago, but I'm just telling you, if it starts creeping in the regular season, these GMs and scouts are going to say, you know what, I don't want a guy like that on my team, and I'm with you. I think that there's a legitimate reason if Arden Key wants to sit out. I'm not going to judge you for it. It wouldn't have been the route I would have taken, but I'm just telling you, I won't judge you for it. Do what you want to do. But I'm telling you, these guys have to be careful. These guys want to see players compete on the field and play football at a high level. You can't just quit halfway through the season and say, you know what, I'm going to be a top 10 pick, so I'm good. It doesn't work out like that.
But in most of these cases, though, and you certainly know because you were drafted, but in most of these cases, when the NFL says, oh, red flag because you did this, red flag because you did that, most of the time, that doesn't end up being sort of a false statement, and the teams that said they weren't going to draft a guy, they actually end up drafting that guy, whether it be a true character defect like an issue off the field or lack of competitiveness. In most cases, they actually don't end up putting their money where their mouth is, and they're certainly not willing to guarantee somebody's future who puts their future at risk by showing how competitive they are by going out and playing one of these games. But the fact of the matter is, if I was Arden Key's dad or his brother or his agent, I'd probably advise him to think about his NFL future here and frankly call the bluff of NFL GMs who said they're not going to draft him.
Well, and I don't think it's going to be a problem for GMs with the bowl games. I really don't. I think they're going to be fine with it and say, listen, I understand. I'm just saying from your perspective of does this start to creep into rivalry games or creep into the regular season once your team is out of the hunt, I don't think that happens anytime soon. And I think if it starts to happen, it is a mistake. I'm with you. I think when you look at this, and I mentioned it yesterday, it only takes one team to draft you. You can all 10 teams can say, you know what, we're not drafting a guy because he didn't play. Well, there's one team that's going to do it, and guess what? They make money off winning games, so they're going to get a guy within their program. I don't fault Arden Key. I think it stinks, but you know what? I think this leads in the direction of let's let red-shirted players play in some of these bowl games. Yeah. I really do.
I agree with that, absolutely. I'm a big fan of giving these guys a chance to take the practices more seriously, get out there and show what they're made of. And listen, we're all college football fanatics here. We're going to watch these bowl games no matter what. We're going to talk about making them more entertaining. What if Auburn got to show you a little Malik Willis in this game? And they like playing, that may not be the best example because they're going to want to play Jared Stidham. But what if LSU's bowl game was a half worth of Lowell Narcisse and a half worth of Miles Brennan? I mean, all of a sudden that becomes a pretty interesting game right there. Yeah. Maybe not a total preview what the 2018 season will be like, but for me, a little bit more fun to watch than just one more game of Danny Etling's game management.
I completely agree because I think if it just keeps trending this direction, then all of a sudden you're out not 2 or 3 guys that are possible first and second rounders. All of a sudden you're out 6 guys that think they could be drafted, or 10 guys that seniors and stuff trying to go different directions. I think it's a slippery slope.
All right, let me move on here. Item number 6. Our AT&T SEC Country Live, 1st and 10 list. So we told you here off the top of the show that Georgia, really about a little less than 20 minutes, could add another elite prospect to its overwhelming 2018 recruiting haul as the 4-star tight end from the state of Illinois. One-time Arkansas commit Luke Ford is expected to choose between Georgia. Auburn's in the mix there. At one point in time, Alabama's come in the mix. You've had a few SEC schools in on Ford, but I would think that Georgia is the overwhelming leader here for Ford. He was tweeting about Georgia again last night. So Luke Ford is certainly a guy that's trending in the direction of the Georgia Bulldogs. Also considered Michigan, who really uses the tight end a lot. But how big of an addition would it be for Georgia to add another 4-star prospect? By the way, you see him on Twitter there making his announcement at 3 p.m. That's 3 p.m. Central Time, by the way. So that's about 16 minutes from right now as I'm doing this show. But you see Luke Ford saying he's going to be making his announcement at his school.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. This is a big body kid. He's 6'6". He's probably about 250 pounds. He's a guy that can become a threat in the pass game and the run game. He does it kind of both ways. So, you see this like I said, snowball rolling downhill for Georgia right now, and I think all these kids see it too, and they start jumping on this bandwagon and saying, I want to be a part of this special class, and they have the ability to do that. I would be shocked if the kid ended up anywhere other than Georgia. I think it's just slam dunk for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, I think that Georgia's the overwhelming favorite here. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory on Ford. Ford's also not a guy that was thought to be signing here during the early signing period. Been a strong Georgia lean, but just maybe not a guy that's going to make that intention known here during December. But you almost get the impression, he was saying a lot of stuff on Twitter last night, you almost get the impression when he saw that tidal wave of recruits coming in for Georgia, he's like, this is too much fun not to get in on the action here, and that seems like what Ford decided to do at that point.
I kind of go the other direction. I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia's coaches saw what they had yesterday and said, listen, we need to know. We need to know what you're going to do. Let's get this thing inked on the dotted line. Let's not string that thing out any longer. If you're going to sign here, let's go ahead and do this tomorrow.
And Ford is definitely one of those guys that was impacted and influenced by the five-star quarterback Justin Fields. That's the guy that he said he wanted to play with. He'll get his chance to do that here at Georgia if that's indeed where he goes. My name is Brandon Adams. This is Mike Johnson, the former Alabama All-American. This is AT&T SEC Country Live. Of course, AT&T is a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV. They'll help you stay connected all season long. Before we get back into our show, can I take care of a couple quick pieces of business? First of all, I was at an event for DogNation.com the other night, and somebody said something that I didn't realize. They told me that they did not know we had a podcast for the show, and I thought, well, that means we're just not telling people enough about the podcast. I always close the show by reminding you that you can check out the podcast at iTunes, but I'm going to start trying to tell you just a little bit more, mix it in from time to time, that we do have a podcast version, audio, of what we do here in AT&T SEC Country Live. So that's a little bit more portable for you, a little easier for you to take us with you. You can check that out on SoundCloud, on iTunes. We do the full audio version of AT&T SEC Country Live right there. We'd love to have you subscribe to the podcast. We would certainly appreciate that. Also, a quick piece of business here. This is my last day on AT&T SEC Country Live for kind of the next few days. Obviously, Monday is Christmas. No show for us on Christmas. After that, I am heading to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. I will be here by phone next week, but won't be sitting in this chair again until the following week. So don't think I've gone anywhere. I just, on assignment here covering the Rose Bowl for the next few days, but I did want to let you know that I'll look forward to seeing y'all back here again, I guess, in 2018, as hard as that is to believe.
Man.
I won't be back here on this show again until 2018, but I do really appreciate all of you who've made this your home for SEC Talk here the month of December, really all season long. It has been a blast for us, and I'm going to miss being here, at least for the full show, but it's certainly been great to be a part of all of this here this college football season. Mike, I know you feel the same way.
I do. It really has been a fun 2017. I think it's been an interesting journey for every team involved. It's crazy how much has changed since we started doing the show in terms of head coaches, recruits, everything that's kind of gone crazy. And I think it's going to be a heck of a start to 2018 for you and me. I'll be in New Orleans watching the Sugar Bowl as well. And I can't wait to possibly get back here to our home in Atlanta. Hopefully, both of our teams are coming back here as well with wins under their belt.
But that's exactly right. And we'll turn these helmets, we'll face them toward each other, and we'll hopefully talk about an all-SEC national championship game, which will drive every Auburn fan and Florida fan and Tennessee fan crazy. But they may have their day in the sun again here pretty soon as well. Let me move on, though. We got plenty more content for right now. Let's dive back into that. Item number 7 on our AT&T SEC Country Live 1st and 10 list. So you mentioned this a moment ago. For Texas A&M, our buddy Bo Molinari in the comment section is probably disappointed about this, but Aggies do lose out on Bobby Brown, who will show you what he announced on Twitter here, that he's decommitting from Texas A&M. By the way, can we get iPhones and word processors? They act like the word decommitting is not a word. It's like, for those of us who do what we do for a living, we're typing the word decommitting a lot, and every time you get the red squiggly line for decommitting. The people that care about what we do use that word a lot.
Right.
So let's let Apple know that is a real word, by the way. But anyway, Brown says he's decommitting from Texas A&M for his own reasons. Just need to look into what's better for me and everything else to deal with my future. I'd just like to give a special thanks to Coach Price, the man himself who recruited me, and a special thanks to the whole Texas A&M staff and players. Obviously, this is a big-time, defensive lineman who's been linked to Alabama here. Is this one of those moments where Alabama's going to swoop in and get another big-time player here in Bobby Brown?
I think that Alabama fans and probably the staff, too, are feeling that way. I think, we've had some comments from Bobby Brown's mom that kind of point that direction, how she feels about Alabama. I think the timing of this kind of makes you feel like maybe he's leaning to Alabama as well. And this does feel like a guy that I think Tosh Lapoy is the recruiter on this and one of the ace recruiters for Alabama. Start to feel like maybe Alabama can start building momentum in that direction with Bobby Brown. He is a great player. I mean, he's a guy that can come in and make a lot of noise. He's not along the 5-star guys that Georgia signed yesterday, but he's still going to be a quality defensive lineman.
I'm so glad to see Jeremy Pettis write this. He says Bobby Brown, that's his prerogative, LOL. Did you grow up with the Bobby Brown music?
No.
Come on. I know
So
all these young whippersnappers in the show. Michael Schlaba, put your microphone on. You don't know Bobby Brown's music? Tenderoni, My Prerogative. Patrick knows. Patrick's a little older. No. He knows Bobby Brown.
Nothing to do with that.
Like, I am not into the R&B scene now at all. I couldn't tell you anything about any kind of like R&B pop or anything like that. But Bobby Brown back in like late '80s. This is a guy that, New Edition fame. Bobby Brown was big time.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now. Not only was I not into that back then, but I don't even know anything about any of that now. I'm pretty. Listen, I don't turn on the TV a ton other than watch sports, and I have like one type of music.
If all y'all know about Bobby Brown is that sort of disaster of a marriage he had with Whitney Houston, you don't know the best of. Listen, I live in Atlanta. I used to see those guys, that couple around Atlanta all the time. That was not always a great thing to see, but the music of Brown in the late '80s, early '90s. That was good stuff for sure. All right, item number 8 here in our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list. So yesterday was kind of a weird day around Tennessee, at least I thought. Philip Fulmer is the guy that goes on the SEC Network to talk about the Tennessee signing class because Jeremy Pruitt's still coaching at Alabama. And as Hannah, one of the folks that works with the show, did remind us, the reason why, you had Kirby Smart speaking at his press conference in 2016 instead of, being in Tuscaloosa, because that was in February as opposed to December when he was still coaching at Alabama. The timing for Pruitt's going to be a little different here. But, man, to not have your head coach speaking on behalf of your program in the early signing period. Now, Fulmer said on the SEC Network and ESPN that he didn't think it was an awkward situation at all. Yeah. But it's certainly not optimal. Would you agree with that?
I think so. And I think that, listen, I think Jeremy Pruitt's approaching it from the direction he probably needs to. I think that, you did all the recruiting you could. You get back to Alabama, you start, competing and preparing for this New Year's Day game down there in New Orleans. This isn't the final signing day. This isn't February, so I understand what Jeremy Pruitt's doing. But it's an awkward kind of alignment, I guess. I think that right now Philip Fulmer really is the face of the program. And Jeremy Pruitt's going to have to slide his way in there as soon as 2018 starts and whenever his time in Alabama is done. I don't think it's optimal for a lot of Tennessee fans, and you guys can obviously weigh in as well, like always. I don't think it's optimal for the program right now. I don't think it's optimal for Alabama either, and I don't think it's optimal for Philip Fulmer. But it's interesting to see this all kind of play out. Steve
Weaver in the comment section says Fulmer's really the head coach. And that's what's concerning to me here a little bit too. Now, Jeremy Pruitt's a strong-willed guy. I mean, listen, I don't think Jeremy Pruitt likes having anybody as a boss. So if Fulmer really does try to assert too much control, I think Pruitt's going to push back against that just based on a pretty significant history that Pruitt's put together here in the SEC. But there were strong rumors the other day that Fulmer had maybe kind of sabotaged Tennessee's own coaching search because he wanted to be athletic director. As we've said before, if he was willing to do that to get the athletic director job, I mean, what would he do to kind of, I don't know, assert some of the same control of the job that he'd really like to have had, which was Tennessee coach. He didn't want to stop being Tennessee coach when they asked him to step down, or I guess flat out fired him. He didn't want to step down at that point in time. Coaching's in his blood, and being the guy speaking on behalf of Tennessee is what he wants to do. I think relinquishing some of that power for Philip Fulmer may actually be a little difficult to do.
I think it is going to, and I can't wait to see the situation play out between these two once Pruitt gets on campus, because I'm telling you right now, and I've said this before on the show, Jeremy Pruitt is his own man. This isn't your typical Nick Saban assistant coach that's heading somewhere else. And there's already been talks that he might look at Rush Probst, who was, I think, at Colquitt County in Georgia. The high school head coach was his head coach at Hoover High School. He's going to do things his own way. He's going to march to the beat of his own drum. There's already been some kind of fallout with the whole Austin Thomas from LSU thing. I don't know what's going on in that front office. I'm just telling you right now that the faster that Pruitt gets to Knoxville, in my mind, the easier this thing will start to be, because I do have a feeling like Philip Fulmer is becoming the face of this program. And I don't know that it's Philip Fulmer's fault. I mean, I think he's doing the best of his ability. But I think there is, I think it makes it such an interesting transition in my eyes.
Bobby Cleary says, I'm 37. I know about Bobby Brown's music, LOL. Hannah, I didn't ask you. Do you know who Bobby Brown is? You don't know his music? You got to listen to Tenderoni. All y'all, go listen to Tenderoni is a great song.
By the way, there is a lot of people in the comment section actually asking when we will be back on the air. So next week, as far as I know, I think Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe Friday, we'll have a show next week.
Okay.
BA just won't be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
BA just won't be part of the show the next week. And then I think the 1st and the 2nd will be out of the show as you and I are both traveling to and from California and back. So I think the 3rd of January, both of us will still be plugged back into.
Yeah, but there will be some shows next week. I think you're right. I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, and a special Friday show next week in honor of the bowl game.
I will be here next week.
But not a Monday show because it's Christmas and the 26th. Also taking a little bit of a holiday break there as well. So check the show out on Wednesday. I'm just not going to be a part of it. And all of y'all need to listen to Tenderoni. That is a really good song. By the way, this is totally off the subject. And I told you we have a little bit of a case of senioritis today I think about. But Bo Molinari in the comment section a moment ago, he mentioned I didn't see this, but I guess Luther Campbell or somebody took a shot at Jimbo Fisher going to Florida State, and one of the recruiters there, Tim Brewster.
Luther Campbell, is he a Florida fan?
He's a big Miami fan. Yeah, okay. Big Miami fan. So you got some back and forth stuff going on there between them. I didn't see the full thing, but I did hear about it, and that's gotten some folks fired up a little bit here today. Hey, let's start with the Arkansas Razorbacks for a moment. Item number 9 here on our AT&T SEC Country Live 1st and 10 list. So Bo Mattingly is a Arkansas radio host, a guy that knows the Razorbacks program pretty well. Let me show you what he tweeted, and I think if you're an Arkansas fan, I think you take this as pretty good news. He says, sounds like Arkansas is working on a deal to make John Chavis the defensive coordinator. Not a done deal, but definitely headed in that direction. Now, a lot of times stuff that's headed in the direction. At one point in time, they told us Brent Venables was heading in that direction. That's obviously a pipe dream. The Chavis thing may be more real, and listen, I know that Chavis did not have a successful run here at College Station. I frankly don't exactly know why it didn't work out there, but it pretty clearly was not working out for Chavis there at College Station, despite the fact that he had Myles Garrett and a big-time pass rusher. That just was not a very good defense. But I think if Arkansas could hire John Chavis to go along with Kelly the coach, or I should say Chad Morris the coach, I think that's a big-time pickup for the Razorbacks.
I think it's huge. I don't even use that word a ton, but this is huge to me. I think that if you can pair up a guy who obviously is a great defensive coordinator, has done great things in the SEC, has been around for a couple of teams now in the SEC, is getting paid a ton of money at Texas A&M. I think when you pair his defensive mind up with what Chad Morris is going to bring offensively, I think it's a beautiful marriage. I really do. The question I had when Chad Morris got the job at Arkansas was, can he make this team tougher defensively? They were abysmal this past year defensively. I think they ranked like maybe 105th in the nation in total defense. It was terrible. And so I think when you get a guy like John Chavis plugged in and the marriage with Chad Morris, who is an offensive guy, I think this is a huge hire for Arkansas right now, and I think fans should be very excited about it.
Here's the other thing, too. Morris is a personality. You and I both are like, ooh. As a head coach, I'm not quite sure how that works. He's a little bit dull. He almost comes across like a mortician or something like that. So that's a tough fit for the SEC. Morris is also a guy that was a coach at Clemson, spent some time at SMU. He's not an SEC guy necessarily, but you can't get more of an SEC guy than Chavis, who's worked at Texas A&M and spent a lot of time at LSU. And by the way, those LSU teams coached by John Chavis were really good. Go back and look at those top spread offenses back in the time when Chavis at LSU. He was shutting them down. He was one of the only SEC defensive coordinators to shut down Johnny Manziel. He had success against Auburn. I mean, this was a guy that had some great success against spread offenses. So this is an SEC guy. Also going back to his time at Tennessee, I think it's a big, bold move if the Razorbacks can get Chavis.
I agree, and you mentioned it. Listen, and I don't really think it's just defensive. I think that you have a guy who's been around in the SEC, been around some of these great staffs, and been a part of championship caliber teams. I think that coming in, and Chad Morris has been around some teams as well, don't get me wrong, but he's a guy who's still kind of a rookie type SEC coach. I think John Chavis can show him the ropes. I think that you can say, okay, recruiting, this might be what we're doing wrong, or in preparation, this might be what we're doing wrong. I think that having him as a background guy, to me, it almost feels a little bit like, and I'm going to stretch a little bit here, but everybody's saying that Jeremy Pruitt mixed with Philip Fulmer is a good marriage in Tennessee because Philip Fulmer knows Knoxville and knows Tennessee. I feel that way about John Chavis in terms of Chad Morris coming to the SEC. I think that you say, you know what, this guy's been around the block. He has a ton of knowledge about what needs to go on. I'm telling you right now, I think it's a huge marriage.
Luke Ford's apparently getting ready to do his ceremony. The four-star tight end, Mark Lee, who's a Georgia fan, says, oh, well, that UG hat's the furthest thing away here. It might not be a good thing. I told you that hat science thing is real. You look at those Emory Jones hats yesterday, it was so obvious which team he is picking.
Right.
He's not picking that, that dirty Kentucky hat, the dirty Georgia hat that he borrowed off of somebody. The other hat still had the stickers on him. The flat bill Florida hat was obviously the one he's putting on.
Yeah.
So I'm not. Somebody's streaming and looking at the Luke Ford announcement right now, and they're saying that the Georgia hat is not too close. So we'll give you the Luke Ford announcement when it comes in here in just a moment.
I've got it pulled up right now, and I'm trying. It's a little bit blurry on my feed, but
let me see.
I can't see
Y'all
the
hold on
hats
for 1
right there.
second.
I can't really see the hats too well. He's got Auburn sitting right in front of him.
Yeah. Once again, you got a lot of curved hats going on. Yeah, you got that's a lot of hats on the table, man. Yeah, the Georgia hat is a long way away. That Georgia hat's a long way. Yeah, so a lot of hats. The Georgia hat is a long way away there. So we'll give you that announcement when it comes out.
Science.
Mike will keep his eye on the stream there. For now, though, let me move on here to item number 10. Let's bring the entire league into this as a discussion for a moment. Give me your idea, winners, losers. Who do you want to give some credit to? Who do you want to chastise here for kind of how National Signing Day and recruiting's gone thus far?
Listen, I think that we probably haven't shown enough love to what Mississippi State's done. I mean, they're probably going to wind up with the top 20 class. They've got some quality players. Ole Miss, to me, what Matt Luke was able to do is building momentum. And I think that needs to be talked about in SEC circles. You're going to look at Georgia, historic class. You're going to look at Bama, who might end up with a top 5 class, and say, you know what, that's Alabama. They're going to get a top 5 class. But I'm just telling you, some of the middle-run teams that have switched coaches or have made new hires, and you look at Ole Miss, you look at Florida, Mississippi State, I think they're doing good things, and I think it deserves to be kind of pointed out that these teams are going to wind up with pretty good classes for where they're at.
Okay, so here's what drives me crazy about doing this show. Y'all all like him. Y'all get aggravated at me all the time. So look what it says on the screen. It says winners and losers. Mike just rattles off all the things. He's throwing out bouquets every direction. He's leaving me to sort of point out the fact that LSU doesn't sign a quarterback, and kind of go through and sort of point out Arkansas left the best player in the state, sneak off to Baylor. Why are you going to take all the good stuff and make me mention all the bad stuff? Because all that's going to do is make more people be aggravated with me.
Well, you can read the context of teams I didn't mention that are some of these other teams. I think Arkansas had a tough day. I think that Chad Morris is going to need some more time to kind of get his wheels spinning. LSU, to me, I'm kind of in the middle with them. They're going to have a top 15 class. How good is it going to be? Does it enter the top 10? I'm not really sure. Obviously a big loss yesterday. Still chasing after, Patrick Surtain and some of these other guys. So a lot of it still left to be played out. That's why I don't really want to name a loser just yet, because there's still 2 months left. And a lot of things can change with some of these classes, in my opinion.
I mean, you got to admit, though. I mean, listen, we like Jeremy Pruitt. I think that he's going to cause some real trouble for a lot of SEC coaches in the next couple of years, either on the field with an upset win or just, paying a lot of attention to recruits of other SEC schools think they have earmarked. They're dangerously close to not signing enough players. They're dangerously close to not bringing up.
If there is a loser from yesterday in the SEC, I think that Jeremy Pruitt did some good things, but I think it's just the fact that he's not there, that he's not able to really get his wheels.
It's just bad luck.
It's not on him, or it's not on Tennessee. It's not like players don't want to go there. I just think the timing's bad, and right now he's spinning his wheels. But I'm telling you right now, I know Jeremy Pruitt, and I got to give him the benefit of the doubt for what he's going to do in January.
All right, I'm going to try to stall here for a little bit. We'll get ready to let Luke Ford make his announcement in a moment. While I do that, it feels like a good time to squeeze in a sponsor read here. AT&T's proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Make the switch to AT&T Wireless and DirecTV.
And it is Georgia.
They'll help you stay connected all season long. So with the announcement has come in, the Georgia Bulldogs are the pickup here for Luke Ford. The 4-star tight end from the state of Illinois has chosen the Dogs here. I was sort of hoping you'd give me a little bit more enthusiastic announcement than that.
Well, it's not like we're shocked. I think that you and I both said, listen, I'd be floored if it went somewhere else. So just commenting on the fact that he picked up the Georgia hat and he stood up, and right now he's signing his papers.
Yeah, so he is signing his letter of intent, and this young man who...
Listen, I'm not a Georgia fan. I'm not going to come up out of my chest. You guys have had enough good luck.
But you can still sort of build the drama of...
You guys have had enough good fortune.
Which SEC team has he chosen? Look, so you got people happy here. You got a lot of hearts rolling in, a lot of thumbs up rolling in. Georgia fans enjoying their day in the sun.
They should.
Much to the chagrin of some of the other fan bases in our comment section. But the Dogs do pick up another one. Senator Wilson saying, I need to jump up about that one. Certainly there's a lot of happiness around Dog Nation. Benevolent Zeus also saying the Dogs are jamming right now, and that is certainly the case. Terrific stuff there for Georgia, who picks up Luke Ford here clearly the Dogs one of the big winners when it comes to a signing day 2018. All right, speaking of AT&T, our proud sponsor, let's get ready to do our AT&T look ahead. So far we've had what, 2 big blowouts in a row in bowl games this week?
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
The FAU blowout, and one of the 2 teams blew the other one out last night.
It was Louisiana Tech.
They blew out SMU because SMU
did.
doesn't have a coach.
It was terrible.
All right, so tonight you've got the Gasparilla Bowl. Is it pronounced Gasparilla or Gasparilla?
Yeah, Gasparilla.
Not Gasparilla?
Gasparilla Bowl.
Between Temple and FIU.
You ever been to Gasparilla in Tampa?
I don't know where Gasparilla is.
That's in Tampa.
What is Gasparilla?
Gasparilla is like a Mardi Gras style festival, like near the water. It's a huge deal down in Tampa. I mean, it's like a big deal.
So this game is in Tampa, Florida.
This game is in Tampa, Florida, and it's funny because it's sponsored by what, Big Boy or Bad Boy Mowers, but it's actually been played in a baseball stadium on artificial turf. So that's pretty fun. That should be a lot of fun.
You got a lean there between you got a confidence pool. Who you like between the Temple Owls and the FIU? What is FIU? I don't even know.
Golden Panthers, I think.
Maybe so. You got a lean in this game?
I'm leaning to Temple right now. I think Temple's actually maybe a 7-point favorite, 6.5-point favorite. I got to lean with them right now.
Oh, there you go. He's going the direction
Make you guys some money
of the Owls. There you go. You can do something with that. All right, let's close out the show the way we always do. Here on AT&T SEC Country Live, we're always looking for champions of life. And, well, today we found one from right here in the SEC. We just showed you a big recruiting win for Georgia, getting tight end Luke Ford. He'll line up next to the offensive lineman. And obviously the offensive line coach at Georgia, Sam Pittman. Georgia picks up a couple 5-stars yesterday between Jamari Sawyer and Cade Mays. And with each of those announcements, Sam Pittman took to Twitter. Now, Pittman's not the most social media savvy guy necessarily, but he's learning Twitter here pretty quick in these modern times. And, well, he took to Twitter to sort of celebrate those wins, but maybe in somewhat awkward fashion. Let's see this example from Sam Pittman yesterday.
Go Dogs.
What is this?
Yes, sir.
That's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. What is he doing?
That's Sam Pittman celebrating the commitment from Jamari Sawyer there. Not to be outdone, though, when the 5-star Cade Mays jumps on board, you see Sam Pittman again going out there and letting you know what's up.
Go Dogs.
Where did this come from? Did they put this out on their official site?
This is his own Twitter.
He looks absolutely frightening right there. He looks like Jack Nicholson in that one scary movie that he's in.
Yeah, that's the way he chooses to celebrate. Whatever it takes to go by.
That guy should be happy. I mean, that guy should be happy with some of the players he's getting.
All right. Nonetheless, thanks for being with us here today on AT&T SEC Country Live. So there will be SEC Country Live next week. I will not, for the most part, be a part of it. I will join the show by phone, so you'll get a chance to at least hear from me. Some of you may want to break from me, but you'll at least hear some from me next week. And then Mike and I both back together again after the new year, talking about what might be an all-SEC national championship. Sure enough, let me say this one more time. I don't care who you root for, any team in the SEC. Yeah. Y'all have all made this a fun year for us here on AT&T SEC Country Live. We are really proud for the chance to talk about the SEC with you each and every day. We're super excited about what 2018's got in store for us on the show, for you and the schools that you cheer for, and the direction the SEC is going. It's going to be nothing but fun ahead. We're glad to have you a part of it with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon right here on AT&T SEC Country Live.
Yeah, you guys be safe traveling over the holidays. We'll try to do the same thing, and rooting for all these SEC teams in the bowl game, like you said.
Happy holidays. We'll see y'all soon.